Is the Buffalo Bills offense more talented in 2024? How can it be better? We're exploring that today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast, and I am your host of Locked On Bills. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, folks, welcome in. It's going to be a fun week in the world of the Buffalo Bills. We have mandatory mini camp this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It's scheduled for Thursday. Sean McDermott typically cancels that last day. We'll find out if that's the case again this year. But a lot of information will be coming through, and we'll certainly dive into all the practice reports and all the information that comes out of one Bills drive. But to start the week, we're going to have a little mini series Monday and Tuesday. I'm going to examine the Bills offense and the Bills defense tomorrow and ask myself the question, is it better and how can it be better? That's what we're going to do today and tomorrow. And then again, mini camp the rest of the week. And if Sean McDermott cancels that last practice, I'll have something else for you cooked up to close out the week. Now, one other note here, as I tell you in the introduction of every podcast, that I am also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast. And so if you want to listen to me talk about the entire NFL, not just the Bills on a daily basis, I do that on the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast. And the reason I'm bringing that to your attention right now is this week on that show is AFC East week. And Kyle Krabs and I, who's the co-host of the podcast, we take the summer and we look at every single team. We study every single player. We categorize each player. We score all the rosters. We do this big project, and we do one division at a time. This is AFC East week. So today's episode is on the Buffalo Bills. It'll be out later this morning, probably around 11 a.m. or so you can catch that. And then tomorrow is the Dolphins. The next day is the Jets. The next day is the Patriots. And then on Friday, we're going to compare all the position groups in the division. So we're going to stack them up. Who's got the best offensive line, the best defensive line, linebackers, secondary? We're going to do that. So big week of AFC East content over on Locked On NFL Scouting. Today is on the Bills, so you don't want to miss any of that. All right, let's get into the topic today. Is the Buffalo Bills offense better in 2024? I'll compare the players in versus the players out, if it's more talented, and then the application of how it can be better. Let's start with the quarterback position, where your returning player, Josh Allen, it's good to have that guy around, right? You've added Mitch Trubisky to be the backup quarterback to Josh Allen, and you've said goodbye to Kyle Allen. So you've swapped out Kyle Allen for Mitch Trubisky. And so very simply, to answer the question, is the room better? Yes. Yes, Mitch Trubisky is a better backup quarterback than Kyle Allen. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Mitch Trubisky is an amazing backup quarterback, but I think he's better than Kyle Allen. More talented, more athletic. Same type of deal with, being a guy that has a good relationship with Josh Allen. And I think that the Bills are better positioned right now, if Josh were to go down, to win some games with Trubisky than they would have been last year with Kyle Allen. So yes, it's better. Now, probably the more important question that I'm going to ask myself about each position group is, how can it be better? And I think your path to better quarterback play for the Bills this year is rooted in two things. Number one, the continuation of Joe Brady being the offensive coordinator. Definitely a new approach, new look and feel. Obviously, the personnel is very different, especially at the skill positions. We'll talk about that. But I think you're looking at Josh Allen in this scheme year over year with some continuity, considering, what was it, week 10? Joe Brady took over last year, finished the season. Now he has the offseason to kind of install and really put his fingerprints on the operation. I think that's one area that suggests that the quarterback play can be better. But then number two is Josh Allen's overall approach. This is the fascinating layer to this season that I'm excited to see play out. How does Josh Allen function, not only in the Joe Brady year-over-year offense that I just broke down, but without Stefon Diggs, without Gabe Davis, his two leading receivers over the last few years? Does he function differently knowing that you're not funneling 150 targets through Stefon Diggs, but you're sharing the ball more and you're getting a lot more players involved and you have a lot of variety with the skill sets? You hear Josh Allen talk a lot about, where he's going to start his eyes and how he might read the leverage of the defense differently moving forward, which I think is a good thing. You heard Josh Allen on an interview with Doug Farrar saying that they're not doing the same monotonous things. Kind of saying he got bored. Basically said, I kind of got bored with what we were doing, which is not okay. But he said it out loud. And so you're hopefully looking at a reinvigorated, highly inspired Josh Allen, right? I think that's your path to better quarterback play. It's the system. It's functioning with some newness around him and how that's energized Josh Allen. I think that's your path to better quarterback play in 2024. So I think you have a path to better play, and I think you're more talented. I think that's a good place to start this conversation as it relates to the offense. Let's move on to running back, where you bring back James Cook and Ty Johnson. I guess we can lump in Reggie Gilliam here. You say goodbye to Latavius Murray. You say hello to Ray Davis. Ray Davis, of course, fourth-round draft pick out of Kentucky. Is the group better? Well, I think that's hard to say. I'm not going to sit here and tell you right now that Ray Davis is a better player than Latavius Murray. I think that the group, if nothing, is more dynamic. I think that's where I look at this group and say, you know what? You swap Ray Davis for Latavius Murray. I think you take a hit in pass protection, but I think you're a lot more dynamic with people that are going to actually touch the football. So how can it be better? How can the Bills running backs be better? I think there's three things. James Cook takes a step in year 3, which I think is very possible. You've heard, was it Joe Brady recently talking about James Cook and how he's come in a little bit different body composition. And I think the volume component, the leap in volume was so big. I've talked about this a lot this offseason. When you look at James Cook's career, dating back to Georgia and his rookie season in Buffalo, the amount of carries he had, amount of touches he had last year was significantly more than any other season. And so I think James Cook not only being more ready for that type of workload, but, hearing the coaching staff talk about how he's physically in better shape to do that. And look, same thing applies here. Year over year, continuity with Joe Brady growing in this system. I mean, James Cook really took off when Joe Brady became the offensive coordinator. And so I think there's more to unlock with James Cook. Obviously, more consistency catching the football. There's meat on the bone for James Cook. And I think that's a good place to be as you ask yourself, how does this running back room perform better this year compared to last year? I think as it relates to Ty Johnson, a more defined role for him. I think people forget with Ty Johnson. The Bills had Damian Harris. They had Latavius Murray. They had James Cook. Ty Johnson was signed like the week before camp, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember the podcast that I did. I said, guys, this is not a nothing signing. This guy can play. He's pretty dynamic. He's got size. He's very fast. Can play teams. Like, there's a lot here. And then he winds up eventually getting on the active roster and having a role. And he felt a little juice anytime he touched the ball. I think him having a more defined role and more established on the team should lead to him potentially being more effective this year. And then, of course, Ray Davis's overall impact. I think the more I've exposed myself to Ray Davis and learned more about Ray Davis, I think there's There's a little bit here to be excited about, whether it's the pass catching profile or the physicality between the tackles, the post contact ability, the short, stumpy frame, right? That's good for winning in short yardage. Like, I think his impact in terms of being a ball carrier can exceed that of Latavius Murray. So there's your path. James Cook takes a step. Ty Johnson has a more defined role. Ray Davis, as a new piece to the pie, is a more dynamic ball carrier or ball toucher than what you had in Latavius Murray. So there's quarterback and running back. On the other side of it, we're going to talk tight ends and wide receiver. Wide receiver being the position that has unbelievable amounts of turnover. We're going to break that down for you here in just a moment, so be sure to stick with me. Summertime means baseball and the NBA Finals and the NHL Stanley Cup and more, and you can bet on all of it over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. They got some fun Bills action that you can get in on. Right now, they're the Bills at plus 160 to win the AFC East. That's the highest odds of any team. They have the Bills over-under for wins in 2024 set at 10.5, second most in the NFL. Maybe you think the Bills are going to exceed that. Maybe you think they're not going to. You can get in on that. Also, Josh Allen, if you think this is the year he breaks through and he's the NFL MVP, they have that at plus 800 right now. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, let's talk tight ends and wide receivers. We'll get to tight ends first. Returning players, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, Quentin Morris. Same guys. There's nothing different. It's the exact same people. They're returning. They're still here. You didn't lose anything at the tight end position. I mean, you're even bringing back some pretty intriguing practice squad guys and Trey McKitty and Zach Davidson. It's the same group. So is it more talented? Well, no, it's the same. But I still think there's a path for it to be better. And, of course, that's rooted in Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid in year 2. I think he will be so much better positioned. Not only will he know what's going on better, but the team's obviously more acquainted with him and hopefully more aware of how to deploy his skill set. And I think the growth that you saw in season where Kincaid early on in the year was kind of a dump and run tight end, just put him in space, throw him the ball, see if he can create after the catch. As the season moved along, you saw more shots down the field, more seam shots, more Josh Allen finding Dalton Kincaid when he works off script. All that stuff came together. Now I'm excited for an entire offseason of that. And you can see from social media pictures that Dalton Kincaid and Josh Allen are spending time together. This is going to be an exciting relationship to see develop. And I expect Dalton Kincaid to be the leading target getter for this offense. I'm thinking he can be 120-plus targets this year. And so him taking a step, him growing with Josh Allen, and that being under the lens of Dalton Kincaid being a very talented football player. I think he's got a chance to be a star. So it's not like I'm pointing to some late-round pick that's pretty underwhelming. It's like, yeah, if that guy gets better, the tight end production can be better. No, I'm talking about a legit talented first-round tight end that had a historic rookie season and him building on that in year 2. Oh, by the way, he's not working back from a back injury this offseason. Plenty of room for Dalton Kincaid to develop. From the lens of Dawson Knox, I mean, it's just a matter of being healthy. Obviously, a very new approach in with the 12 personnel last year, and Dawson Knox having a heavy inline presence. And then week 4, he breaks his wrist. He tries to play through it for a couple weeks. He's kind of a disaster those couple weeks. Gets a surgery, misses time, comes back, and helps the team. I thought the Bills' offense was better when Dawson Knox was part of it post-wrist injury. So him being healthy, and I think the team being more established in their 12 personnel identity. And then tight end 3 is Quentin Morris, and it's not like we've seen a ton of Quentin Morris, but I think he's quietly a very solid tight end 3. His blocking has really come along, and then while he doesn't have a volume role catching the football, in those few instances every year where he does get a chance to catch a ball, Quentin Morris can make some nice catches. And he won that Giants game for the Bills last year with a really nice catch down the field, a nice body adjustment, and he did it on like a severely sprained ankle. So I think you've got a really good-looking group that's returning. And when you look at all three players, you feel like there's a path for their impact to be even greater. Now let's talk wide receiver, where this is massively different. Your only returning player is Khalil Shakir, which is interesting because something I've said, at least in a lot of my conversations with folks in our Locked On Bills subtext community, is that when you look at the wide receiver position last year, the only player that I think met expectations was Khalil Shakir. And now I say Khalil Shakir potentially exceeded expectations last year, but top to bottom, nobody met expectations. Stefon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Trent Sherfield, Deontay Hardy, none of those guys met expectations. And I think that led to a lot of questions about Adam Henry as a wide receiver coach. And maybe it's fair to pin some of that on him when you've got 5 of your 6 players not doing what you expect them to do. Maybe there's other things involved with it. But the only guy that's returning is the guy that met expectations, and that's Khalil Shakir. So you say goodbye to Steph Diggs, you say goodbye to Gabe Davis, Trent Sherfield, and Deontay Hardy, and you say hello to Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Mack Hollins, and Chase Claypool. Is the group better? I don't think I can sit here and tell you yes. I mean, we'll get into how it can be better, but Stefon Diggs is the best player of all these guys, and he's no longer there. And losing that type of talent, regardless of who you brought in, it's not better. Now, can it be more effective? Sure. I mean, obviously, Diggs was not good down the stretch. I mean, Khalil Shakir outproduced Stefon Diggs over the last 12 games of the season last year on 50 less targets. That's the thing that we're forgetting. Stefon Diggs is a great player. All right, he's a great player. He would help the Bills if he was back. He's going to help the Texans. He's a great football player. But he wasn't effective for the Bills on the stretch. So it's not like you're saying goodbye to 2020 Stefon Diggs. That's not what you're saying goodbye to. You're saying goodbye to the Stefon Diggs that we saw down the stretch that was pretty much a disaster when you consider the volume of targets that he got. So no, I don't think talent-wise this is a better group. How can it be better? I can find a lot of different reasons for that. I think, number one, variety of skill sets. I think you have this nice mix of size. Yards after catch skill is way better in this group. You've got some deep threats here in a Marquez Valdes-Scantling. You have a nice mix of guys that can do different things and win in different ways. And hopefully Joe Brady can put the puzzle together and make it work very effectively. So variety of skill sets. Number two, you're bigger and faster. I think this is a bigger, more explosive group. Obviously, you can look at guys like Keon Coleman and Mack Hollins and Chase Claypool and Marquez Valdes-Scantling and say, you know what? There's a lot of size added in those players. And it's more explosive. I mean, Curtis Samuel has an explosive element that didn't exist in that group last year. Oh, by the way, you added another 4-3 guy in Marquez Valdes-Scantling. So you add 2 4-3 guys, and you had 0 4-3 guys last year. So, yeah, you're bigger and you're more explosive. Hopefully you're deeper. I'd like to think that while you may not have the top-end guy in a Diggs, that 1 through 6, that collection of skill sets, not when you go 1 for 1, that's not going to look good. But when you go 1 through 6, are you potentially deeper? Yeah, I think there's a case to be made there. And then I think maybe the X factor and potentially the most important thing is the makeup of the room. I'm not saying that it was unhealthy with Stefon Diggs, but there's certainly a new approach. You hear this. I mean, they're talking everybody eats. You're hearing Josh Allen and Joe Brady talking about, hey, everyone's got to do their job. And sometimes that's going to be running a for love of the game route to run a clear out to get someone else open. And you got to take that seriously. And if you do, you're going to get the football. I think there's a mental makeup to this room and how they're playing together and how you'd like to think that it's an unselfish group. You kind of heard some of that messaging as well, that overall makeup can lead to more effective results on the field. So no, losing Stefon Diggs and replacing him with this variety of guys, I don't sit here and say, yeah, that's a better room. But when I think about the variety of skill sets, the fact that you're bigger and more explosive, that you're hopefully deeper, that there's a new mental approach to this room, I think that's where you can find the avenue, the angle for the wide receiver room to be more effective in 2024. Especially because, like I said at the beginning of the wide receiver conversation, the only guy that met expectations last year, Khalil Shakir. Massive turnover at wide receiver. All right, folks, we're talking offensive line, offensive tackle, interior offensive line on the other side of it. So be sure to stick with me. All right, folks, we got a little turnover to discuss here on the offensive line. We'll do offensive tackle, then we'll do interior offensive line. At offensive tackle, you're returning Dion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, and Ryan Vandemark. You've added Lyle Collins to the mix. I don't think you really said goodbye to anybody. You look at Jermaine Ifedi. He was rostered for a good chunk of the season last year, but he was cut in season, and he didn't finish the year on the team. So I'm not really sure you lost anything here. You're basically returning Dawkins, Brown, and Ryan Vandemark. You've added Lyle Collins to the mix. Is the group better? I don't think so. I mean, it's the same people. It's not worse. I think that's the good news there. It's not worse, but it's the same people. It's a little bit like the tight end conversation. Same guys. How can it be better? I think that's where you can get a little excited. I think generally, and this would apply to the interior offensive line, but it's year 3 for Aaron Kromer. And the year 1 to year 2 jump from the group was really, really strong. You felt that. How much more is there to unlock in this third season of working with Aaron Kromer? And that's not insignificant because Aaron Kromer is an offensive line coach that really asks you to maybe play the game a little bit differently. I've had extensive conversations with Aaron Kromer, so I know this. He even tells his players, look, I need you to trust me. And if for the first few weeks of practice, you're not the same effective level of player as you've been in the past, that's on me. I'll go to bat for you. I'll tell them, hey, I'm working on some things in your game, but stick with it and trust what I'm telling you, and you're going to play the best football of your career. And that happens, right? There's case of that happening for guys. So with more time under tailored techniques for these individual players, yeah, you can unlock more with the group. So, yeah, I think starting with this entire offensive line conversation, year 3 of Aaron Kromer, that's a big deal. I think you look at Spencer Brown, is still a developing player. We saw his best football to date in 2023. Don't tell me there's not more to unlock there. That guy's gifted as they come. And obviously had a winding path to get to this point. Lower levels of competition, inexperience on the offensive line in general, physical upside, but a lot of injuries. I'm excited about the trajectory there. Obviously, it's a contract year for him as well. And then Dion Dawkins, he's a very defined player in the NFL, but we can all admit that 2023 was his best season. How does he build upon that? So, yeah, it's the same guys. So I don't know that you're more talented, but can they be more effective? Yeah, I think there's a case to be made. On the interior offensive line, this is the other spot where you have a fair amount of turnover. You're bringing back Connor McGovern, but you're switching him from left guard to center. Osiris Torrance is returning as your right guard. David Edwards back in the mix, and then, of course, Alec Anderson, who's been developing, and this is his third season. You've said goodbye to Mitch Morse and Ryan Bates. You've said hello to Will Clapp and a draft pick, a 5th-round pick in Cedric Van Pran Granger. And I guess you can kind of put Lyle Collins in this group because I think he's going to, be a backup right tackle, but also maybe a backup interior player as well. So is the group more talented? Is the personnel better? No, it's not. You can't sit here and say that swapping out Mitch Morse and Ryan Bates for Will Clapp and Cedric Van Pran Granger, that's a better group. It's not. But I will say that it feels like this was a very calculated choice by the Bills. So as I transition into the how can it be better portion of this conversation, the Bills made this choice. And they didn't make the choice because they said, you know what, man, I hope we could be worse on the interior offensive line. I don't want to be as good. That's not why they did that. Of course, there's some salary cap implications to this, but we've been through it. This was a choice. This is more than anything a choice. So how can it be better? Well, I think, first of all, Osiris Torrance in year 2. You can apply everything I said about Dalton Kincaid to Osiris Torrance and his opportunity as a talented second-round pick to come in and grow, right, and build upon a strong rookie season. Now, he had his struggles down the stretch. There's no question. Some pass protection stuff in particular, where defensive linemen were able to get to his edges a little bit and create some pressure. He'll have to get better, right? He'll have to improve. But I think the ramp up, the rookie wall, all of that, he's going to be so much better equipped to deal with it all in 2024. So the second year of Osiris Torrance's career, that's where I find a lot of hope that this interior can be better. But then the other side of this, and I've talked about this several times, I think your path here to having a better center left guard situation is rooted in Connor McGovern and David Edwards playing better together than what you saw from Mitch Morse and Connor McGovern. Independently, Mitch Morse and Connor McGovern are solid starting football players. But together, I didn't love them playing next to each other. I thought you saw a lot of issues, particularly in the run game. Whether it was timing, communication, working combos and scoops, those two guys, I felt like in the run game in particular, next to each other, just didn't play well together. And I'm hopeful that putting McGovern at center and David Edwards at left guard, that you have a pair of guys that work better together than what you saw in McGovern and Morse. The offensive line, or the performance of any offensive line, is not just about the quality of player that you have in every single spot. That certainly matters. But it's just as much about how well those 5 guys play together. And I'm not saying that there was like issues with those two human beings with each other. I just don't think that they complemented each other well. Neither one a super physical player. And I think when you have two non-people movers next to each other, I think that could be challenging for an offensive line. And so I'm hopeful that whether it is David Edwards or Cedric Van Pran Granger comes in and crashes the party in some type of way, that you've added to your physicality, your power, your ability to create displacement in the run game. And that through that, the pairing of McGovern with whatever other guy leads to better results on the field. I think that's your path there. But no, you don't just swap out Mitch Morse and Ryan Bates for whatever combination you want to point to and say, yeah, that's a more talented, better group. Can it be more effective? Well, I outlined the path for that to be true. All right, folks, there you have it. Examining the Bills offense year over year. Is it better? How it can be better? We'll do the same thing for the defense tomorrow. And then, of course, shift our attention to mandatory minicamp the rest of the week. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.